I'm just going to start with a little bit of background about the U, as we call it, actually. We have about 4,000 faculty accounts in our system right now. Those are some of which we're not actually working with, but 30% of those, or about, I should say, it's about actually 1,700 accounts that we're working with right now in our early adopter units, which is not actually 30%, but we anticipate that there will be more when we're finally done implementing the entire institution. We are working with 3 early adopter units on the Twin Cities campus, as well as the entire Duluth campus. And we spent the last year customizing for those early adopter units, and we just launched, it was a very soft launch about 2 weeks ago. We decided to situate the implementation of Activity Insight, or Works, as we're calling it on campus, in the Provost's office, or more specifically the Office of the Vice Provost for Faculty and Academic Affairs, which is where I work. We decided to do this because we really wanted to focus on the business or academic process as opposed to a technology-driven one. And our office also does a lot with promotion and tenure, annual merit reviews, so we see a lot of CVs, and that's the primary basis for how we decided to implement or customize our screens, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But we do obviously still have a need for somebody in the Office of Information Technology because we are using web services, and so we do have an analyst and a developer helping us with that. Our strategic priorities that were the focus of our implementation include, like I said before, an academically driven process as opposed to a technological one. And we wanted to customize towards a full implementation. So even though we're working with a subset of colleges on campus right now, we really wanted to focus on what it's going to look like for everybody else once they come on board later, so that we don't have to retrofit later and make changes on people and they're already in the system and get used to one thing and then change it up on them later. It's never a good idea, if we can avoid it anyway. We also focused a lot on data integration and standardization. Why did we choose these strategies? Well, I guess I won't repeat before, but academically driven process, basically because we thought that it was really appropriate for us to make sure that the solution would help with faculty needs rather than an institutional one. Obviously, we're really excited about the ability to report on an institution-wide basis later, but first and foremost, we want to make sure that our faculty are actually using it. Avoid retrofitting later is basically why we wanted to customize towards full implementation, like I said before. And for the data integration, we spent a lot of time on this, but basically we decided to do it because we wanted to offer value to faculty in that we were going to save them time, ideally, by integrating all the data we have on campus already, getting it into their accounts, and they wouldn't have to manually enter it. And then also it just kind of makes sense to use what we already have instead of recreating everything. And standardization, obviously, because we wanted to do institutional reporting. I'll talk about it just a little bit later, but we did decide to configure or have a single campus instrument with a primary college configuration, which I'm hearing today kind of sounds maybe like that's a unique situation, especially for such a large campus. That was a struggle, but I think we're still heading in the right direction because we want to do institutional reporting. So the scope of our project here was that we decided we were going to have faculty who are tenured and who have tenure track appointments have works accounts. There are a lot of other people on campus that do teaching and research activities who do not fit in those categories, so there were some exceptions, especially when we're talking about keeping track of activities for accreditation reporting purposes. So we did make some exceptions, but we really wanted to limit our scope for now at least and make sure we get this off the ground running. And then we decided to recommend at least that our faculty start with the first year of activities so that they can complete an annual review in the system and then backfill and worry about all historical data for producing a full CD. We did put together a steering committee and a project team for this project. Our steering committee represents a wide group of all of our stakeholders, really. We don't really meet that often, but at least they're involved in the governance process and talking about, what this is and what it will mean for our campus and how it will help faculty. And then we also obviously got feedback from them about what is it that you're looking for. We did analyze lots and lots of CVs, not just CVs of faculty who were working with in our early adopter units, and this was because we wanted to customize towards full implementation. We did some pilot testing early on, a couple of groups of pilot testers, in fact, sort of in the early to mid customizing process. Say, here, we've got this so far. Is it looking good? Give us some feedback. What do you like? What do you don't like? And then, as Matt had mentioned earlier this morning, we did a usability lab, and Digital Measures came to campus for this. It was actually really interesting and fun to watch. So just to give you a quick idea, the usability lab was one little room with a computer in it, sitting right next to an observer room that was separated by a mirrored glass. And so observers, such as myself and Digital Measures, were in that room watching faculty and administrator volunteers complete scenarios that Megan Gorky, our solution specialist, helped to write. And these tasks are everyday tasks that we expect people to use Works or Activity Insight for. And you can see the little red dot here is the eye tracking software. We could see where people were looking at on the screen. Excuse me. And it was really very interesting, actually, to see what they were thinking about, what their thought process was. I expect to see this button here, or I'm looking for this over here. And we assessed the intuitiveness of our screens, and as obviously Matt took a lot of this into consideration in developing the new user interface. Some of the obstacles that we encountered and are still dealing with are data integration, standardization, and scope. Data integration was really interesting and still very difficult to make decisions around. We use Oracle PeopleSoft on campus, and we've been using it since 1999. And there are a lot of limitations in terms of the data we have in PeopleSoft being appropriate for output to CVs. And things like all capital letters for a granting organization, or even just different kinds of abbreviations. We could have NIH, or we could have National Institute of Health, or we could have NatInst HLT, something like that. And that's not appropriate for printing on a CV. And so we had to decide, do we want to import this data in the first place? Or do we import it and let faculty edit them? But then we're talking about using web services, and we're using them on a frequent, updating basis. And so when we do that, anytime a faculty member makes an edit in their Works account for something that is programmed into our web service, the next time that web service runs, it's going to be overwritten and their edit's going to be gone. And that'll be frustrating. So we've come up with some workarounds, but they're still not great. We don't have a good solution yet. But for instance, with that kind of an example, we would we would import what we have, but then we'd offer faculty another text box right below it, say, this is what you want printed to reports, type it in. So obviously it kind of messes up the screen, and it's not the best solution, but that's what we're doing for now. Standardization was also very hard. Cornell was mentioning it a little bit earlier about how everything is so diversified, and everybody has different terminology for the same thing, and just different processes overall, or different interpretations of what this means. And that was a struggle for us, still is. Public engagement is my example, I suppose. Actually, doing this process of standardizing helped us to define what public engagement is and how do we want to measure it. So instead of, for example, asking the question, is this activity publicly engaged? That's a very interpretive question, and people are going to struggle, well, what does that mean? Or how are you defining public engagement? And they got to think about it really hard, so chances are they're just going to skip that question. So we decided to ask instead, what did we ask instead? Does this activity involve an outside entity? So that's just an easy yes or no answer. And then if it does, there's a pop-up box that comes up with some extra questions, just a couple though. And so maybe it causes a little bit of work on our end to go through that data and really do a qualitative analysis of that data to say, we want to count this data in this category of public engagement. There's certain levels of like publicly engaged, kinda, or really publicly engaged. This is really what we're heading towards as an institution. This is our goal. We want to get here. Look at these faculty who are doing that. But we decided that it was better because data in the first place is better than no data. So that's the way we decided to do that, and that's just an example of some of the standardization we've been trying to do. And then obviously the scope. We are really excited about all the things that we can do with Activity Insight or Works on our campus, but we had to make sure that we were doing something that was feasible in the first year and something that would catch on, and then we can build on that later. Some of the future goals that we have for this project, we really want to, we're starting now, in fact, to think about using a web service for populating our faculty website bios. And we think that will really help with user buy-in, particularly faculty, because right now they are maintaining their own website bios. And if we're asking them to maintain their own Works account as well, that's just too much work. And they're going to question, why am I doing this twice, and probably in lots of other places too. So we're gonna set that up for them. We also want to take a look at workflow. We're really excited about that feature actually, because we think that it will. Well, we think that downloading a report as it is right now and then saving it to your computer and sending it to whoever your person is for your annual review is just a little bit cumbersome, and it takes time. And then we're also kind of worried about people changing the format of that report that we already standardized. We have a standard CV template, for example, that we use for promotion and tenure reviews. People are downloading that report because they don't like the format of that CV. Well, that's all fine and good for other purposes, but if it's for promotion and tenure annual review, we actually want you to use that report that we created. So I think by using workflow, we'll be able to keep that all within Works, and we won't have that trouble anymore. And some advanced reporting, obviously, we just want to do some more customized reports for colleges, because they have different needs, and we think that will help with administrator buy-in as well. And we're also looking at bringing on board our medical school, which will be a challenge as well. We think, as well as our extension faculty, we are also our land-grant institution of the state, and so we have a lot of people working out in the community. But this is just sort of unique data needs, I suppose, and unique way of collecting it. So we haven't quite figured out how we're going to do that yet, but that's what we're starting to think about. And I also just wanted to throw in a little disclaimer that we did only just launch 2 weeks ago. It's a very soft launch. Our faculty mostly don't really know about it yet. So we don't have anything to share with you today about how well our strategies actually worked. We think they're okay, but we'll see. I guess the moral of the story here is that we really focused our implementation on faculty. We talked to them, we talked to their administrators, who are also faculty, deans of colleges and department chairs and things like that. What is it that you're looking for in this kind of a tool? How can we help you to make a more efficient process doing whatever it is that they want to do? And then our needs as an institution will come after that, I think, because we really want them to use the system, and that will be beneficial to us as well. So with that, I guess we'll save questions for later, and I'll let Rob do his presentation on re-implementation strategies.